Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrienne Campbell, where we talk about real life, challenge assumptions, and explore different ways of being in the world. This week, I have my two best friends, Shannon Gorzak, a wife and mother of two children with a full-time career in tech, and Morgan Pemberton, a wife, dog mom to two lovely corgis, and licensed professional counselor. We'll be exploring self-care from a holistic perspective and what it looks like in each of our lives. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. So welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrienne Campbell. Tonight, I have my two best friends, Shannon Gorzak, a wife and mother of two children with a full-time career in tech, and Morgan Pemberton, a wife and dog mom to two lovely corgis and licensed professional counselor. We're going to be exploring self-care from a holistic perspective and what that looks like in each of our lives. And of course, it's not going to be as serious as I just mentioned because it's us. And so I know we'll have all kinds of fun stuff to talk about. So ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. So glad to have you here as always.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So I just wanted to take a second and talk a little bit about like the way I view self-care. And of course, feel free to like chip in whenever you guys want. But I think that like self-care, it's weird because it's been so talked about for so many years, like, oh, self-care, you have to take care of yourself and blah, 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 blah. And then there was this like backlash of like, yeah, but it's not just, a bath and bubbles and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm like, I feel like sometimes it flounders in between and some people get stuck in like self-care has to be like these really healthy things and all of this like, hard work, which if you're exhausted, like you're not going to fucking do that. And so like, I look at self-care as literally just like taking care of yourself in whatever way, shape, or form that you need to. Right. So like, what does self-care mean to you guys? Like, what is your definition of self-care?
Well, for
Morgan?
me, I was gonna say I will happily sort of start the charge here. For me, I think we have to look at, like you said, the holistic kind of way and go like, what do I actually need now? Like, what is something that I'm not paying attention to, or what is something that I haven't put a lot of energy towards lately, or do I have the energy and being able to do the actions that help actually renew what you need in that moment. So sometimes for me, it's cleaning my house and making sure that I have a nice place to exist in. And other times it's watching episode after episode of Stanley Tucci searching for Italy and stuff like that. It's so good. I just started watching it. But like it takes different forms depending on what I need at that time. But to me, the biggest thing is making sure that the thing that you're doing is actually accomplishing the goal that you want it to accomplish.
Right. Exactly. And like, that's why like in all the coaching stuff, all the classes I teach, everything I do, I always, the first step is awareness. Like we have to become aware of what the problem actually is before we just go slapping Band-Aids on random holes and hoping things work out. Right.
Right.
What about you, Shannon? What's your definition of self-care?
You know what? To be honest, like, I don't know what that means. I'm 42 years old and I'm still trying to figure out life, right? Because I don't know, my image of self-care has always been like, I gotta go get my nails done and my hair did and like make it a thing, because that's always like what's portrayed, right? You look at a meeting like, oh, we're having a girls' day, and you go spend $500 to get it done, which for me is totally not self-care, because then I'm like, oh my God, my pocketbook and my money and my things, and that's more stress, right? So it's realizing back to like what Morgan said, is sometimes taking that time to go, you know what, right now, I just need a cheeseburger and my pajamas and a true crime podcast, and I am happy. Like, that's what I need in solitude. Like, shut the door, leave me alone, right? Like, that's what I need in that moment, especially in instances where my brain has gone 1,000 miles an hour that day, and I'm fielding this question and that question. I'm turning on the technical side and the emotional support animal side and everything all at one time, is recognizing like, I need to be able to turn that down and just veg out on something that makes no sense. Like The Circle, for instance. Sorry, The Circle, if you're listening. But like stuff I don't have to think about, or just, sitting on the couch with my kids and cuddling them. Cleaning my house is another one, like having that clean space and that's my semblance of like, this is mine. I know it's clean. It's where I'm at, and I'm okay with that. And it gives me that chance to process through whatever has been on my mind that day, or I'm thinking about for tomorrow that I'm going to deal with, that maybe I've been like disassociating from because I don't want to. So that moment of cleaning is my time to do those things. So kind of all over the board on it, but it's really recognizing now, understanding what does that actually mean when somebody says exercise self-care for yourself.
Yeah,
Well,
but
and
I
it's such
think,
a tightrope. Oh, I'm sorry, Adrienne, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that, like, I think the all over the board approach is actually the correct approach. I mean,
Yes.
you just won 5 gold stars.
So many stars.
Yeah, because we are these like beautiful multi-dimensional beings, right? Like there's never going to be one thing that always fixes everything. Like there's just not. Like as much as we want to say like a hug from you will fix all my problems, like that shit's not real. So like there's never going to be one thing. And so, you know, earlier today I was on my Patreon page and I put together, like I do a weekly reflection video for my paid members that just, and this week's theme is self-care in alignment with the podcast. So I put a little reflection video in there and I made this handout that's like 3 pages long and it just walks you through an exercise, but I split out our humanness into 3 categories, essentially mind, body, and soul. And then I went like even further. So like with mind, like you were talking about, like some days you have to think a lot, right? And you're using your brain and you're making decisions and you're organizing things and you're putting stuff on the calendar. And like what that actually is doing is wearing your prefrontal cortex out. Like it's just like at a certain point, you're like, I can't make any more choices because I literally can't. Your brain's like, and we're done. And then body, we focus, I think, so much when we think about like body health and body self-care is like our physicalness, right? Which I think of the body in like really 3 different terms. So we have somatic, which is the way we experience the world through our bodies, right? And then physiology, the way our body experiences the world. And then the physical. So like somatically, if I'm in a crowded room and having to like stay like this because I'm feeling crowded, that experience is not fun for me somatically, right? And that's stressful. And physiologically, if I'm hungry, I'm not going to have a great time. I'm probably going to get a headache, you know, like that's physiology, like keeping the body running and operating. And then physically, I'm broke and old and sitting in a chair all day hurts. Like it hurts my joints, it hurts my back. You know, I get up and I'm kind of hobbling, you know, and then there's soul, the 3rd category, you know, which is like, are we living a life that's authentic to who we are? And I think sometimes the stuff in like the soul category completely gets left off because it's harder and more challenging to face. It takes a little more courage because it's like, you know, like I said, authentic life and all of that. But our emotions, how often are we able to experience joy? Because I don't know about you guys, but if I get to experience a moment of joy, like that childlike laughter, oh man, that's one of the things I think for me that is closest to like makes everything better. Right. Yeah. Like, because there's just this beautiful like refill of like soul life affirming energy that I think we get from like that kind of stuff. But then on the negative side, if you're working in a job or hanging out with people who are super low vibe and are constantly like just bringing you down, right? Like at the end of the day, you're going to be hurting. So I think all over the board is exactly right. We need to think all over the board, and certain days, different parts of those categories are going to need more or less attention, like depending on what's going on. No, what were you going to say, Morgan?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, when you were talking about like the childlike joys. So just a couple little tiny things that I have learned to do for myself. Like one, I used to be a very, very angry driver, lots of road rage. And
I get that from California.
Right. I mean, and I love, you know, the people of Colombia, but y'all can't drive.
Traffic circles will be the death of all of us.
Get out my water.
Oh my God. So something that I've started doing a while ago was that instead of focusing solely on like my destination or whatever, I've tried to sort of gamify it, like, and figure out like what's something I like to look at while I'm driving, or what do I like to be just kind of aware of. And for me, that's dogs. So I literally count the amount of dogs I see in a day. And it makes my morning commute and my evening commute so much better, because then I'm like, oh my God, I saw like 3 dogs on my way home. That's awesome. And it's gotten to a point where my husband has supported it so much that he bought me a clicker that clicks the numbers. So I just have that in my hand while I'm driving. So I'm like, "Oop, there's a dog. There's a dog. There's a dog." And it just, I know it's a little thing, but it just helps me connect with that part of myself that is joyful and aware of the things that I actually like.
Yeah. And that's a
Yeah.
really beautiful example too of being proactive in your self-care, right? Because that's the other thing. I think we focus a lot on being reactive, just like, I mean, in so many areas of a life that we're reactive, we don't actually do anything about something till it hurts or it's broken or it's difficult. Whereas like once you raised awareness in that area, you were like, okay, this is a part of my life that is challenging. So what can I do to make it better? And so you're supporting yourself, right? And so by putting those steps in ahead of time, it helps you like move through those challenges easier. And like when I do like my Myers-Briggs assessments, I mean, I used to do them in corporate, and I honestly think that most companies use the assessment results in like totally inappropriate and wrong ways, because it should not be a label. Like whenever you do a personality assessment of any kind, DISC, Myers-Briggs, whatever, right? Insights, it should be just helping you look at yourself in a different way, getting to know more about who you are so you can create those kind of supports, right? Like I didn't know about myself, which is so crazy. I'm just going to say there are certain times I reflect on things I like have known about myself now, like that I've become aware of, that I'm like, how did you not know this, Adrienne, for like so many years because you were so miserable? Like in Myers-Briggs, I'm a intuitive versus sensing. I'm intuitive. So it's big picture person, right? I bet you guys are both shocked by that. Yeah. I don't like details. Not a detailed person. Can I do it? Sure. But like the idea of building a spreadsheet makes my skin crawl. Like it literally like sucks all the joy out of my life. And after like an hour, I just want to like smash things. Like I really don't like it. And so like now that I know that about myself, I can be proactive in like the types of tasks that I accept, the types of jobs that I take, resourcing out things that I don't want to do. And it's not just because I don't like it, but it literally hurts me because it's not who I am, you know? And so I think like those proactive steps are so important. Like even more important than the reactive self-care, in my opinion.
No, for sure. And talking about the Myers-Briggs and all those things too, I think part of that is recognizing also that as you mature as a person and you go through different life experiences and stuff, again, back to the label pieces of it, right? Is that you always have this vision of I am this and this is what I am, right? But recognizing like you're going to change. Like I was more sensing for a long time based on the career and the things that I have. I'm more on the intuitive side now when I look at my Myers-Briggs, but different life experience and things have led it that way. And that's okay. So you don't have to say, well, no, because I'm this is the only way that I can react to stuff or how I have to be fed information, because that's going to change. But being aware of it, so you know, back to your point of I am going to take on that task, or I'm going to find somebody else that has that passion about it. That's why I think getting to know your teams, especially in the workforce, or just even being cognizant of what that stuff means, so you can get the right people around you, whether it's work or it's home or it's wherever, to do certain tasks that, back to your point, eat your soul. Because I too don't like spreadsheets.
There are people that do.
Oh my God, they live for them.
Love it. And I'm just like, praise God for your existence in the world, because like you are a gem that just, you know, it takes all the things from me that hurt and are painful. That's right.
I love my spreadsheets. I love my lists. I like the detail. I really, really do. But which is funny though, because in my Myers-Briggs, I'm also more intuitive.
Okay.
So
Well, and so a note on Myers-Briggs, okay, is like you should not switch types. It's like this is who you are.
right.
But certain people are closer to the middle.
hmm
And if you're close to the middle, you flex both ways depending on the situation much easier.
I
Right.
flexed hard then because I went from one side of the spectrum to the other.
So like,
I am
so
full
in
pendulum.
Myers-Briggs for all, because it's 4 acronyms, right? Your introvert or extrovert preference, the big picture intuitive versus sensing detail. There's feeling versus thinking, and then perceiving versus judging, right? So I'm close to the middle on every single one. And I flex both ways pretty easy, except for the intuition and sensing. I am so clear to the right on intuitive, like big picture, which is why it's so challenging for me to move into that space. But yeah, I have lists and I have freaking spreadsheets and all that because I run a business, you know? And like, I mean, that takes us right into like, sometimes you do shit that you don't like because you have to. And it's just what it is, you know, it's life. You can't only do the things that you want to do. And I think that's where that proactive self-care like really comes into play, you know? Yeah.
And I think
community.
Go ahead.
Well, like Shannon, you brought up like community and how important it is to resource around you. And I think in like Western society, we are taught both consciously and unconsciously that we need to be able to do everything on our own. That we're individuals. Like if you're not strong enough to get all this done, that like you're a failure, you're not good enough, you know, blah, 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 blah. But in my more recent age, I will say in the last like 5 to 10 years, I have started like reaching out more. And I look at it as like, instead of like a weakness, like I can't do this or I don't want to do this or whatever, it's this person's better than me at this, right? For one. And two, they're going to actually enjoy it. So if they're doing something they enjoy, that puts more joy into the world. And it's supporting them in something that they enjoy, right? So like taking all the shit out of my life and making theirs better. And I probably will make a friend, you know? So like, it's awesome that way.
Well, and I think it's being okay, even if like, say you're both on the same playing field when it comes to creating that spreadsheet or whatever, it's recognizing like, I am just as good as them at doing the thing, but I hate it and I don't want to do it. So I have other things that are going to give me passion and ignite my soul that I'm going to go focus on. And then I'm going to hand the other tasks over to somebody else that's going to fulfill those pieces for me. And what I was going to say on that, getting to know who you are personally, I think plays a lot into how we adjust our self-care, right? So for me, I'm almost dead center on the introvert extrovert side. So I can flex one way or the other. And I see it a lot at work on how I have to be on. I call it my on, right? When I'm doing my things at work. And then when I get in the car and people are like, hey, we should carpool. I'm like, no, I'll murder you. Like, I don't.
Except for me,
not you. Just I need my space. Right? So no. But recognizing that and knowing, like planning ahead and stuff, knowing if you're going to have a tough week or stuff's hitting and you are a certain type of person, like, do I plan that party for Friday that I'm going to go to, or am I going to stay home and do something different with the family? Like, what does that look like from the proactive side? Or recognizing if you go home and you're reacting to something is, where was I at all day? And is that who I naturally am? Or did I flex myself into a position that I don't want to be in? Now I got to fulfill that other side of that to make me whole again. So I think it's important to understand what those things are for you as a person so you can plan that self-care accordingly or know how to react when it happens. Because I think some of us get flustered, right? Because you don't know how to react. You're overwhelmed. All the things are hitting on all cylinders. And you're like, I don't even know what to do in my life. And so being able to take that pause and go, hey, what is it that's calling to me that I'm missing? What do I need to go take care of? Back to the, what did you say, all the things the doctor said, somatic, your physiological, that stuff, right?
Words.
Super smart one. Words, stuff. Feed everything. Take care of it.
Yep. Well, and you know, what I'm hearing a lot from you guys too is that our age is an advantage in this space, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
And I will say, like, I am so impressed with the younger generation and how much more self-aware a lot of them are compared to like when I was their age. I think because
Oh my
the
God.
culture, dude, shit is just shifting in the world. It's kind of cool. But at the same time, like I remember, so most people who would meet me, watch me present, go to any of my classes, etc., would assume I am this extreme extrovert, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my whole life, that's who I was told I was. That I was this extreme extrovert, that's why I was so good. Like I was a drama club president, you know, I've acted in like commercial plays and stuff like that. I've done all kinds of outward facing stuff. But at the end of it, I am exhausted. And at this point, I can look back and see the differences in the sizes of groups I work with, the way the different sizes of groups and I interact and how that changes how I feel afterwards. And from doing my Myers-Briggs, I realized that I'm like, actually, I am E, I'm extrovert preference, but like barely.
That's
So
where I'm at too.
I have a ton of introvert preferences, and I got so caught up in letting people tell me who I was my whole life that I actually ignored my own clues, right? Like, oh, I just need to keep going, or oh, blah, 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 blah. Like, I love live music, but I don't like large crowds, especially being jostled by them. So when I was younger, I would just get drunk. I would go to shows and I would just get drunk because it would numb all of that somatic like overload, right? And I could like be present and enjoy it, and be with my friends who all thought I was this huge, gregarious, like extrovert person and not have to disappoint anybody because I didn't show up like I was supposed to. And now I just wear earplugs and stand in the back. Like, it's good. So I think, like I said, our age like really helps because and not just age, because I know people our age and older who are so unaware of themselves. But like the three of us have put in a lot of work in figuring out like who the fuck we are, you know? Right. And so being able to look back across our lives and our experiences and be like, oh, I see, like, I felt like this because of this and blah, 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 blah. And then like Morgan being proactive and like, so what can I do to like support myself through this experience when it happens again? Because it's not like you can just not drive.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could, but like life would be very different. Yeah.
And I would hate, because I like driving. I just don't like the other people on the road. But to go back like to Shannon, I think that you were kind of talking a little bit about like, you know, we have these abilities to be in these different spaces and we're trying to kind of balance and figure that out. I think something, or at least a message that I definitely internalized growing up and that I'm really done a lot of work to undo is this idea that if I have the ability to do something, then I should do it. I am obligated to that work.
Yep.
And I've realized through a lot of trial and error, a lot of disappointment, and a lot of just like resentment, to be honest, that when I'm accepting roles that I don't want to be in, I am doing everybody a disservice.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
And so like particularly myself, and I'm just like, oh, maybe if I just, I don't know, have some boundaries, say no, and just go like, yeah, I can do that work. It's easy for me to do that work. I also don't want to do that work. It's okay for me to not like doing things or not want to do certain things, even though I have the time and the ability. I may not have the energy or the will.
Right.
Correct.
And I think
that's the thing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say I think people in our generation, a little bit older too, there's like the guilt trip kind of feeling too, right? But you're so good at it. It's like, I know, but I want to murder everybody afterwards. So no, I don't want to do it. And being okay to say, no, I don't want to do it. Whereas before growing up, it's like, okay, well, I'm good at it. So I guess I have to be the one that does the thing, right? Because everybody's looking for you to do that thing and you don't have to. And I think that's what I appreciate about the younger generation, you know, watching my daughter and stuff now, growing up and going through that and watching them already have those boundaries and saying like, no, I don't, yeah, sure I can, but I don't want to, or I'm not going to do it in this moment, or I'm going to do it a different way versus I think at least for me, I can say that growing up, it was more like you felt you had to. It was an obligation, and you had to meet whatever the people looking at you expected for you to do. And if you didn't, then you were a disappointment, enter all kinds of, damaging thoughts here. So it's nice now being older. One is you like, I think when you turn 40, you get that magic scepter that's just like, you give no more fucks. You're welcome, right? You've made it to midlife. You can now give no fucks. Move on. But with that, it's seeing now we have a support system that's below us that is doing the same things and reacting in the same ways. And it's like, oh, it's okay if I just go home and turn things off, or I sit and click in my car every time I see a dog, and that's fun for me. And that helps with stuff. And to be able to talk about it too, versus being like this dirty little secret that you keep. Is like, oh yeah, my self-care is doing X. It's like, no, I can talk about it, and maybe that'll help somebody else to be like, that's a great idea. It's like, I was thinking that's a new game of the license plate game, right? There's like, oh, I found 4 corgis today. And I found
yeah. Well, and like, I think a lot of what you're talking about is like, it takes courage.
Absolutely.
Self-care takes courage. And, Morgan mentioned boundaries, which is a huge part of it, but courage to, one, figure out who the fuck you are to begin with. 2, what your needs are, and then admit those to yourself. And then 3, to like stand up for yourself and like actually like ask for what you need. And I think that at least for me growing up, I had a lot of really heavy expectations placed on me. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. Life was chaotic, and I handled a lot of things that kids my age usually did not. Right. And so I just kind of carried that into life. And then I went into the military, where like you mess anything up, you die. Everyone dies every time you mess up. Right. So like no pressure. And then I went into tech, and then nuclear. So again, all these high stakes environments. And I remember, like, I'll never forget this because it was a total shift for me. I was living in Denver, and I had to drive from southern Denver, the south of Denver, to the north end of Denver for this new job I got. And it was hard because the I-25 corridor is
it's terrible. Yes.
So sometimes my commute, like with no traffic, was I think 30 minutes. Sometimes it took an hour and a half. Sometimes it took 45. Like I could never plan right. And after like 2 weeks of being at this new job, I was so stressed about it that I was thinking about quitting. Like that's how stressed I was. And I went to my boss, and I was like, I was late one day, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm late again. Like blah, 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 blah. And she just like looked at me, and she's like, Adrienne, I don't care. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I don't care. She said, if you're late, do you stay late? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And she's like, right. And you get your work done? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I don't care. I like literally don't care. And I was like, oh. And then like every day after that, driving to work, I'm like, I'm late. Don't give a shit. Nobody cares. This is amazing. And like, even if there was traffic, didn't even care because I had my breakfast burrito or whatever, had my coffee, just sitting in traffic, driving with everybody else, having a great time. And so sometimes it's like, allowing others to give us permission, or be a kind soul and give that permission to someone else. Right. Like something I've started saying recently is when people say I'm sorry is nothing to be sorry for. Because we just like get these ideas in our head that we're doing all these wrong things, but it's literally like just us telling ourselves that based on information we've gathered across our lifetime or whatever, So mind frame shifts. It's insane. It's wild. Boundaries. So what kind of boundaries do you guys have in place when it comes to your self-care, whether it's proactive or reactive?
Sorry, my thing just froze, so I'm just like, I was waiting. I was like, oh God, this is gonna be really good. Oh my God. Okay,
we're all.
Oh, okay. No, so what boundaries do I put into place? Like, I mean, for work and stuff like that, I don't check. I only check my email once in the morning on my days off, just in case there's something that I do need to attend to before I come to work on Wednesdays, because I have 3 days off in a row. So for me, like I like to have that kind of balance, but also like for friends and stuff, like if if I'm asked to do something, like if people are like, oh my God, you should come to my, I don't know, um, some kind of like multi-level marketing thing, um, that's going to be a no for me. Those are just not my
Mhm.
best time, you know? So I don't really do any of that stuff now. And I can kind of be like, hey, like I would love to do something some other time. This I'm not free for that.
Mhm.
Or if there is like with my husband, you know, like I can be like, hey, I'm gonna have a long day. Like I'll have like 9 clients or something like that. And I'll be like, my brain is not going to be able to choose dinner. And he'll
Mhm.
be like, "Yeah, got you. No problem." Or if I know that I'm gonna have a long day, then I just pick dinner early in the day because I don't have decision fatigue by that time.
Right.
So that's another way I kind of set a boundary for myself there. Um, but yeah, it's just being able to know that like the people that I have invited into my world are
Mhm.
people that I can say no to, and they're gonna be like, "Yeah, totally understand. Totally get it." Because the people that don't shouldn't really be that close in my sphere.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And, you know, one of the things I hear from clients a lot when I work with them is, well, how do I say no to that? Like, how do I tell someone I don't want to go? Right. Because I think often we don't set boundaries or we agree to things because we're
Yeah.
afraid to hurt people's feelings. And I was totally one of those people because I didn't want to let people down. I didn't want to disappoint them. Um, and so, like, what I often say is like, make it about you and not about them. Right. And just make
Mhm.
sure they understand that like you're taking care of yourself, like even when it comes to like the spreadsheets. I had a boss once. It may have been the CEO of a company who was like, hey, Adrian, I want you to do XYZ. And it had something to do with spreadsheets. I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do that. And he looked at me like, what? And I was like, yeah, doing that really hurts my soul a lot. And I feel like XYZ, this person would probably do a much better job anyway. And he was like, are you serious though? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but you're really good at it. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do it. And because it's really painful for me. And he was
Mhm.
like, oh, I never knew that about you. And he was like, okay, no problem. And again, one of those moments where I was like, man, I should have said that months ago. Right?
It's
But he was a CEO and I was intimidated and afraid and didn't know how to say it. And I think eventually I was just so tired and worn out that I was like, here it is, buddy. But I think that, the key is to really make it about you, not about them. And
Mhm.
like if somebody, one of the things I've had to set a boundary on really hard after moving back to the city, which is still funny for me because it's Colombia. There's like
Mhm.
120,000 people. But after living in the woods for 3 years, it's a lot. I can't do more than like 2 social engagements a week. I just can't. It wears me out. It's not that I don't love people, because I do. I love all of you guys so much. I have so many friends here that I haven't seen in forever that I want to be able to see more. Like you guys, I would love to see you guys every single week, multiple times a week, right? But I also know that like if I did that, I would burn out hard.
Mhm.
And it would affect like literally my body. I wouldn't sleep well. It would affect my diet. I would get headaches. I mean, it's crazy how it all
Yeah.
adds up like that. And so, the 3 of us is easy because we're all kind of this way. But like, if there's been times like I've invited Morgan, like I'll be out and I'm like, hey, I'm swinging by, the bar or whatever. You want to grab a beer? And she's like, no, I've just had a busy day. It's not going to work for me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Because it's not about me and I know that. And if someone asks me like, hey, you want to hang out Thursday or go to lunch, then I respond with like, oh, you know what? I really can't this week because my social battery is just done. And like you said, the people who are in my circle, I know that they're going to be fine with that because hopefully they do the same thing for themselves. Right.
Mhm.
But yeah. What about you, Shannon? What are some of your self-care boundaries?
Well, the thing Morgan talked about and touched on was letting my husband know ahead of time if I've had one of those days where like I have made all the decisions and my brain cannot compute in this moment. And so I'll send a message, right? Or I'll get the message from him that says, "Hey, what do you want for dinner?" I'll just be like, "I can't." And he knows, like, he knows what that means is like she is spent and I'll come home and dinner will be there, whether it's, homemade or it's takeout, whatever, right? Because he also has his own things that he's gone through for the day. And maybe he couldn't that day either, but he knew where I was at. So I think for us, it's that communication of where we've been and saying that. Being able to be more vocal about my wants and my needs, right? So, Adrienne, you mentioned about being the people pleaser and needing to not disappoint people and do the things because that's what they expect of you. And it being okay to say, I don't have the emotional bandwidth for that right now. That's kind of been my go-to in here lately is, I'd love to, but I can't. It's just been a lot for me. And so saying that for the people that are in my circle, they know when I say I don't have the emotional bandwidth, they know like that's where my limit and my boundary is. And not to push it any further or say, hey, can we table this and come back to it at some other point? I'm not okay with those places. I still struggle though with creating those firm boundaries. So it's not consistent for me. I still waffle quite a bit where I'm like, no, I'm holding firm and that is that. And then somebody says, but, and I go, okay, right? And I do it.
Well, I think we're all nodding right now because we all know,
Yeah.
And I'm a therapist and I teach people how to set those firm boundaries. And I still find myself going like, I mean, okay.
Yeah, right.
And I know, but at least I know I'm making it a decision though, as opposed to making it my default, which I think that's an important piece of that puzzle where it's like, I'm going like, okay, I'm choosing to waffle on this, or I'm choosing to cave on this, rather than it being just like, I always cave.
Well, and I talk about it a lot as like, not all boundaries have to be like impenetrable brick walls. They can be permeable and they can shift, right? To allow more or less in, depending on where we're at, depending on the importance of something. Because like I said, I hate spreadsheets so freaking much, but do I have them? Of course I do. I run a business. If I'm going to be successful, I know I need to flex into that space to create that structure for myself, right? I know it. Do I sometimes have more than 2 social events a week? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because maybe I only have this one opportunity to see a person that's not going to be around for the next 3 weeks or whatever. Like I'm going to flex, And I think like those moments are when it's even more important to look at your proactive self-care around that, right?
Right.
And allow yourself to flex and shift. It's
called
okay.
balance.
You can cancel plans. You can reschedule. And the thing is the more that we ask about what we need, and like one of the things I did learn, this was my last corporate job. I'm not good at on the spot stuff. So like at meetings, when people of very important levels in the organization would just look at me and be like, Adrienne, blah, 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 and like fire a question at me, I'd like, and I'd be like, I'm really smart. I had no answers to things. But I realized what I could do is say, I can give you an answer right now, but if you want the best answer, I'm going to need some time and I can get back to you tomorrow. And 99.999% of the time, they'd be like, okay. And the first time I did it, I was terrified, right?
Yeah.
Terrified. They're going to be like, you're an idiot. Get out of here. But then they said, okay. And I was like, oh, okay.
And no one died. It was fine.
I didn't get fired, right? And I think that like by us asking for what we need like that, it also gives other people permission to do the same, which then it creates that sphere of understanding that like we talk about enjoying in our friends, right? Because us asking for permission to be who we are and get what we need gives them permission to do the same thing. And with the younger generation, every time we do that, we're teaching that to our kids, our nieces, our nephews, all of these, that whole younger generation is seeing us have self-agency, us take care of ourselves. And they're like, okay, that's how you do life, like that.
Yeah.
Right. Instead
My
of suffer,
niece,
suffer, suffer.
right, my niece who is in her early 20s, and like I texted her something, and then like she texted me a couple of days later and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I know it took me a while to get back to you." I'm like, "Honey, you're not on call. Like you I trust that if you don't get back to me, it's not malicious. Like I trust you. And
Mhm.
I hope that you take time to make sure that the people in your life can trust you too, and that you don't have to be on call for them." And she was like, "That's kind of mind blowing." And I'm like, "Okay." Like she needed to
Mhm.
hear that right then, because I was like, "Okay, like you don't need to do this. Like I'm gonna be okay."
That's an interesting point because you think about it now with, all the ways we have to communicate with each other. It's you feel like people have instant access to you in that moment and you have to respond. And like for the new generation, they don't know what it was to have a landline and nothing else. Like if you were out, nobody was gonna get you until you came home and you listened to the voicemail, right?
Mhm.
Um, and applying that approach to just because I get a text message in that moment or a phone call does not mean I have to drop what I'm doing and take it and respond back when you're in a space to take it. And if you forget because you got busy doing all the other things, again, circle back to the people in your circle are going to know and understand that it's not malicious. You're not doing it because, oh my God, they hate me and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
No, life is busy. I got a lot of fucking shit going on. And we'll circle back when we circle back. And it's being okay and allowing that grace
Yep.
to others to know, like,
Yeah.
hey, life must be hard and assuming best intent, right? I don't
Exactly.
know if we do that enough for each other, is to say, you know what, things must be busy, be crazy, and maybe I'll reach out again. Just say, hey, how are things? It's been a couple days. Just make sure, are
Mhm.
you alive? Right? Like, give me a
Proof
sign
of
of
life.
life.
Right.
That's all I want.
Exactly.
But being okay with being like, no, you don't get instant access to my life, and it's okay to take that break or be handling other stuff and come back when you're ready for it.
I think the autoresponder feature was one of my favorite things in the whole wide world when I'm super busy or like when we worked at Santa Onofre together. I actually went to Sean and was like, so I want to I learned it. Where did I learn about this? Some training I went to this one time. But I was like, I went to this, I was one of the conferences I went to, and they talked about doing this thing, and I really want to do it. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I want to put an autoresponder on that says I only check my email twice a day. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I want to only check my email twice a day at 10
Yeah.
o'clock and at 2 o'clock. And I'll put in there, if it's an emergency, you can call or that you can contact my boss. And he was like, okay. And he's like, why do you want to do it? And so I explained to him like how for me, getting interrupted multiple times throughout the day like wasted so many hours because I couldn't actually like when I really need to work, I focus, right?
Right.
And he was like, okay. He's like, I'm on board. And I was like, oh shit, serious? Like I really did not think he would say yes. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I did that and I turned off my notification on the computer, which is important. And it changed my life when it came to productivity. And when I was traveling these last few years, I put autoresponders on all my business emails that just said, I'm currently traveling and I don't have good, internet connection. I will do my best to respond to you within 72 hours.
Perfect.
And that was it. And it's, like if they can't hang with that, I don't know what to tell you, but that's just what life is. And I love it. I love it so much because it allows me to set that boundary and create that space, when I need it. I can't do it all the time, but
No. But that's an excellent example of just daily self-care, right? Knowing that you're the person that you get in deep in something and we have to pull back and go, what's going over here? And you have to switch gears and then come back. That start and stop is exhausting to you as an individual. And I have the same thing. Again, goes back to but I got to email and I got to take care of their needs, but you don't. It can wait. And to your point of if it's important, there's other methods to get a hold of you. So whether that's home life, it's work life, it's whatever I'm only going to get to it when I can get to it. And then if you really honestly need it, give me a call, shoot me a text message. That's in a more immediate way to get a hold of me. And then it alerts me like, now this is important versus everything being important because it hit my inbox in my email. So just those little daily tips like that, right? It doesn't have to be this big grand thing, but this is my boundary. And this is how I'm going to handle the chaos that is my life by doing these little things to assist me along the way.
Yeah. So Sarah put up a comment that I just have to comment on because yes, it's the anxiety from the ding of the phone, right?
Oh my God, so much. I hear like,
it's totally, and like, that's something that like, so we talk about these boundaries and I talk about the email thing and I talk about this and it sounds so easy and so simple, right? So I just want to like address the fact that like, it's not. Like I mentioned, when I went to my boss, I like wrote up a proposal about the email. I like scheduled a meeting. Like it was like serious. And I still was like, he's going to tell me I'm crazy. He's going to say no, like blah, 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 blah. And thank God it was Sean. He was just awesome. Right. Yeah, he was great. Sure. But like, not all bosses are going to say yes to that. And it's also not, this doesn't work in all spaces, but even like at home now, I run my own business. I work from home like 90% of the time. When I go to work on research, basically when I'm writing or reading, I turn off my phone. And I will tell you, I am so trained by that piece of plastic and metal that even when it's off, my brain will stop whatever I'm doing and look at it. Like every once in a while to just see, is there a notification? Is there something I'm supposed to be doing? Like blah, blah, blah. And so it really takes a while to like untrain that. And I have had more and less success, to be like totally frank. There have been times in my life, probably when I was working on my dissertation, if I'm honest, where I've set hard boundaries. I might even leave my phone in a different room because I know like, not only is it not on, but like, no, just no. Right. Yep. And the more I did that, the less the head turning and the waiting for the sound happened. But it takes time because these are like actual neural pathways that have been created in your brain, like physical pathways, right? And so you're undoing all that training. Same thing like when we go to ask for what we need, whatever the need might be, even if it's just asking your husband like, hey, can you take care of dinner because I'm tapped out. If you grew up in a household where you weren't allowed to have needs, that is not a simple or easy task. That is one of the biggest, hardest challenges that you may face this year, right? Just to ask someone to make dinner for you. So just being really clear that like, if you're struggling with any of this stuff, like it's okay. And like to be gentle with yourself, be patient, try a little bit, pull back a little bit, try a little bit, pull back a little bit, because it sounds, I always say it's simple, but it's not easy. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also
what's the adage? It takes 21 days to break a habit, right? So it's being consistent with it too. So for you're struggling with those things, like you said, leaving your phone in another room, try it for 21 days. Maybe it doesn't happen every single day, but you just keep going through that to where eventually it becomes easier for you to do. And you readjust how you react to those things. And I'm sorry, Morgan, I just totally like jumped right over the top of you there. So what were you going to say?
No, you're quite all right. No, what I was just going to say, like to that point also, it helps us become more aware of what we use as avoidance techniques. So like, if I'm like, I don't really want to write my dissertation, I'm going to want that ding. And I'm going to want to kind of check my phone because then I don't have to do the real work.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can kind of go like, oh, I've been avoiding this. Okay, how do I make this thing that I've been avoiding more appetizing or more attractive to me? Like, what do I pair that with? What self-care can I give myself during that process that maybe I wasn't before, which is why I was avoiding it?
So I'm laughing because you know what I did is I fed myself gummy bears.
Sorry, like that was, I can see it.
I would take a handful and put them on the desk, and for every paragraph I wrote, I got a gummy bear. So it was like reward, right? Like you can do it, just keep going.
Whatever works, man. You gotta do it. You gotta have those motivators.
So, and the other thing too, I was just thinking about is that as we're training ourselves in all of this, we're also training the ones around us. Okay. Like I often say that when you share what you're thinking, what you're feeling, why you're making the choices you're making, you're helping to train people on how to treat you. And so like not answering the phone or leaving it in another room or, whatever. I have friends or know people that if they are like, I tried to call you 6 times and I'm like, oh yeah, my phone was in the other room. They're like, your phone was in the other room? Like blah, 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 blah. Right. They don't know me well. And then I have friends that are like, I tried to call you 6 times and I'm like, oh, my phone was in the room. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because they already know this about me that like when I'm focused, it goes away and I'll get back to them when I get back to them. And, it's not a statement on our relationship that I don't return your text like right away. It's not about you. It's all about me, So like most people's things are, I mean, we face the world from us out. And, I think we forget, where's this quote I read once? It was, what other people think about you is none of your business.
I say that all the time. I say that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, when we're asking people, or like if we're going to start setting more boundaries and stuff so we can protect our time and so we can give ourselves more self-care, I like to kind of make that known to people who tend to push a little bit harder and ask them for help. Because I'm like, hey, I am really working on setting some limits and boundaries for myself. And so what that might look like is blah, 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 blah. Will you help me with that? Because people are like, oh, I want to help.
People love to help.
They love to help. And so then like when that comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I can't really do that. And if they're like, oh, but like why? And I'm like, remember when I asked for help? They're like, yep, totally fine. Got it. No problem. No other questions. And I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Because that's another way that it makes it about you and not them, right?
Exactly.
Because a lot of us have insecurities, and so if we feel, sometimes boundaries can feel like distancing. And so when we set those boundaries, especially in social environments, people can feel like you don't love me, you don't want to spend time with me, blah, blah, blah. And so, that's another perfect way to do it, Morgan, is just to say, hey, can you help me with XYZ? Yeah, absolutely. So we got about 8 minutes left, ladies.
Gone quickly.
How would you say?
It says it's gone quickly. Like,
they always do. They just fly by. So I would love for you to share, like, if you want to. I'm going to share mine. The one reactive self-care habit that you have for when things are like really not great, and it just helps kind of turn it around. I'll go first. I'll share mine. So it started when I worked at Songs, to be honest. And whenever I was having a really shitty day, I would throw myself what I called a pity party. And I would stop at the store and buy a bottle of champagne. And those little cocktail weenies? I would buy those and croissants and cheese, and I would wrap them and bake them. And I mean a lot, probably 30 or maybe more. I don't know. I didn't count.
No judgments.
And I would sit on my couch the entire night and I would drink that whole bottle of champagne and eat my cocktail weenies, hang out with my cat, because let's not forget pets. I don't know how we haven't brought that in yet. But I would hang out with my cat and I would watch like the cheesiest, most terrible romance movies ever, rom-coms. And I always knew like the reason I did it is because I gave myself X amount of hours to be in that space, right? X amount of hours to feel bad for myself, X amount of hours to just shut everyone out and just completely indulge, knowing that when I woke up in the morning, we were done. And then we were going to get up and get back on that train.
Start over. Yep.
Yeah. But I knew that like there was a tender piece of me that just needed like a coddle. Right. And so like, that was always my thing, is that was my pity party. That's what I called it. And I never felt embarrassed by it. I was never ashamed by it, because I knew that like, that was the thing it was like my reset button, and then I could keep going. So yeah. How about you, Shannon?
I think I have pity parties too, but I don't pull in the champagne and the Vienna sausages wrapped in croissants.
You can come over to one of mine sometime. They're fun.
The smorgasbord of my pity party varies depending on what it is. But no, I think I do something very similar in that I mentioned the circle earlier, right? I find some indulgence in a TV show and I self-isolate. I just let people know, like, I'm going in the hole, lights are off, I'm snuggled up in bed, I am alone in this space in the moment, and I'm going to watch something that doesn't require me to think or have feelings or do any of the things, right? And you may walk in and be like, what the hell are you watching? Mind your fucking business.
That's what I'm watching.
This is about me in this moment, not you.
That's the benefit of only living with animals most of my life.
My cats judge me pretty hard, let's be honest. But yes, I think those are my most reactive, especially when it's been hard. Either that or it's just the rage music on the way home, and I might do a lot of screaming to Korn or, intro music here on the way. I might already have it planned out ahead of time and have my Spotify playlist ready. So when I hit that car and I turn it on, it's instant, like right into it. That also may happen on occasion. But
God, we didn't even talk about music.
Yeah, music is my outlet for the majority of things in my life. Like that's my hole I go into, and depending on where I'm at in a mood, my music genre will bounce with that and go. But that's my happy place and always has been, as I bury myself in music. So Morgan, how about you?
So I can't do one. I have to do three because it depends on what's going on in my life.
I love it. Do it.
Yeah. So one will be what I call my good old fashioned singing parties. I actually have a Spotify playlist, and if nobody's in my house, then I will just put on that playlist and I will just sing to Barbara Streisand, Linda Ronstadt, and Evanescence or whatever. And it's just like, because it's just such a visceral thing for me. So I will do that. I also do enjoy Animal Crossing a great deal.
There you go. Okay.
So because I'm
that's
just
the game, right?
Yeah, it's a game, and I just and I redecorate my entire fucking house on that in that little game, and then I walk around and I talk to all the villagers because they tell you how nice you are and how helpful you are, and that you're their best friend, and they're so glad that they moved to the island, and I'm like, yes, I needed that. Thank you. I needed a win today, But I think historically it's mostly been like books that I know are going to be uplifting, like fantasy fiction kind of stuff, like Legends and Lattes is one that I read recently, and I really, really like that because it's like, yeah, I want that kind of like, I know it's going to be good. I know it's going to end well. And it just allows me to kind of escape a little bit and know that there is good in the world, because some days that's a little hard to find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll say, I actually haven't thrown a pity party in a really long time. I didn't think about it until I talked about it. For me, because we haven't really brought up animals much, you both know my dogs. Okay, look at them. Look at them.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Your two nut jobs, yes.
Oh my God. Look at her.
Oh my God.
Okay. I freaking love my dogs, and they also make me insane. But they give me that spark of joy in my heart, like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if I'm ever like really struggling, like if I've really let life get to me and I'm just tired, like soul tired, I'll take them swimming. And I don't I'll go to the dog park here because there's the lake, right? And I just let them swim, and just watching them, they're like joy incarnate. Just watching how happy they are, and they're barking and they're jumping. I'm just like, oh, it's going to be okay. The world can't be that bad if this exists right now. Like, it's going to be okay. Yeah.
So we had Sarah said that self-isolation is definitely my introvert self-healing. Girl, you're my spirit animal. I got you.
Right.
And then,
I think it's funny, like the three of us are all like somebody from Songs is definitely watching.
Yeah, Songs funny. Represent whoever you are, LinkedIn user.
But yeah, like I totally lost the train.
Sorry, I derailed you.
I know. I got it back. Is that like what's interesting about the three of us is I think all three of us have that type of personality that people assume we're extrovert, like huge extroverts.
Oh God, yeah.
But we actually have a lot of introvert tendencies, varying levels, of course, right? But I think the important part of that is like just because you are more extroverted doesn't mean you don't need time to yourself. And that it's okay to ask. Let's just say it's okay to ask for anything you want. Like anything that you think you need, you can always ask for it. And if your boss says no, or a friend, it's not going to work, find a compromise, look for something else. Don't give up, but it's okay to ask for what you need. And I would encourage everyone who's listening or watching to be courageous in defending yourself and taking care of yourself, because you're awesome and the world needs you in your most authentic and fulfilled and healthy form. So, yeah.
And Danny G, sorry, we didn't know it was you because you show up as LinkedIn user. So yeah, whoever you are was correct. But now I know who you are, so hi.
All right, so I think that wraps us up for tonight, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll say goodbye to everyone out there. And I hope everyone has a great week and that you set the boundaries you need to and take care of yourself the way you need to. All right, bye. Thank you so much for joining us on The Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast that live streams every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope you enjoyed this evening's episode and that you'll catch us again soon in the future. Enjoy the rest of your week.